Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Glad to be here.
This time, we're going to be tackling a topic that might surprise you with how much there is to actually talk about.
Okay.
Christmas, the
Yeah.
purpose of Christmas. And
Okay.
I know, we celebrate it every year. What else is there to know?
Right.
But trust me on this one.
Okay.
You send over these excerpts from Rick Warren's book, The Purpose of Christmas,
Yes.
and we're about to uncover some pretty fascinating layers that you might have missed even if you celebrate Christmas every year.
It's true. Warren's approach really does go far beyond just the normal, shopping and holiday stuff.
Yeah.
He really gets down to the nitty-gritty and outlines these three core purposes of Christmas celebration, salvation, and reconciliation.
Yeah.
Each one kind of more profound than you might expect at first.
Yeah, I was struck right off the bat by how he frames Christmas as like the biggest party on earth.
Yeah.
And who could argue with that, right?
Right.
But then he throws in this curveball. It's a party where the birthday boy often gets sidelined,
Yeah.
which is so true.
It's true.
And he includes this survey in the book where he asked Christmas shoppers what they were celebrating.
Oh, wow.
And some of the responses are hilarious, like surviving another year,
Oh, my God.
finally finishing my shopping.
Wow. Yeah. Talk about missing the point.
Really missing the point.
Oh,
But, it's a funny observation, but it really highlights that truth that sometimes we can get so caught up in the externals of Christmas
yeah.
that we forget his heart.
Totally.
But I love that he doesn't just leave it there.
Right.
He dives into this deeper theological meaning of celebration
Yes.
and explains that it's really about recognizing God's immense love for humanity.
Absolutely. And what's really cool is how he doesn't talk about this love in some abstract or distant way.
Yeah.
He emphasizes that God's love is actually intentional and unique for each person.
It's personal.
Yes, for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's talking to you specifically.
Yeah, and then one detail that I love that really highlights this is how he points to just the incredible diversity of creation as evidence of God's love.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, just think about the sheer variety of flavors,
Right.
colors, sounds you experience.
It's amazing.
It's like God curated a world just designed to delight you specifically.
That's a cool way to look at it. It really is.
Yeah.
It makes you appreciate those everyday joys in a whole new light.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's another pitfall that I think we can fall into that he points out is getting stuck on the image of baby Jesus.
Yes.
It's like we freeze frame the story there at the manger scene
Right.
and forget that he grew up and lived a full life, died and rose again.
Yeah, it's such a crucial point, because it is like reading the first chapter of a novel and thinking, the whole story. You're really missing out on a lot.
Totally.
And so focusing just on baby Jesus, it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
And Warren emphasizes that the full narrative is essential to understanding the depth of Christmas.
Yeah. And speaking of depth, he highlights the powerful image of Jesus on the cross with arms outstretched as the ultimate expression of God's love.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is, a lot heavier than candy canes and reindeer.
Yeah.
But, it's important.
It's powerful, but then he brings it back to celebration
Okay.
with this heartwarming anecdote about his family's tradition of throwing an annual birthday party for Jesus,
Oh.
complete with angel food cake and reflection questions.
I love that.
Sweet.
It's beautiful. And it's such a good example of how to infuse even simple traditions with that deeper meaning.
Yes.
It makes you wonder, what would it look like to personalize your own Christmas celebrations?
Yeah.
To really center it around that heart of the message.
It's a good question to ponder.
It is.
But before we get too lost in cake and decorations,
Okay.
he throws out another thought-provoking question.
Right.
If Christmas is a birthday, what's the gift?
Ooh.
And I have a feeling this is where things get really interesting.
Yes. That gift, as Warren explains it, is salvation. Okay. But here's where it gets even more intriguing.
Okay.
He clarifies that salvation isn't just about avoiding hell.
Right.
It's much broader and much more relevant to our everyday lives than that.
Okay.
He actually asked people what they needed saving from.
Oh, wow.
And the answers were incredibly diverse.
Like what?
Worried debt the past.
Yeah.
It seems like everyone feels stuck in some way, just yearning for a kind of rescue.
Yeah, and that yearning points to a fundamental truth about our human condition.
Right.
And he lays out 3 dimensions of salvation that go way beyond the fire and brimstone imagery we often associate with that word.
Yeah.
First, he says we're saved from something,
Okay.
and he doesn't sugarcoat it.
Okay.
He uses some pretty vivid language to describe our flawed selves, our tendency to mess things up,
Right.
our struggle with selfishness and bad habits,
Yeah.
the whole sin thing.
Yeah, it's refreshing how honestly he addresses the human struggle.
Yeah.
But then, crucially, he moves on to the second dimension.
Okay.
We're also saved for something. He argues that God designed each of us for a purpose. But we get so sidetracked by our own, insecurities and distractions that we just lose sight of it.
Yeah.
It's like we're wandering around with this amazing map to a hidden treasure,
Yeah.
but we keep getting lost in the woods.
That's such a good metaphor because I think we've all felt that at
Yes.
some point, that sense of being lost or off track.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, could that something's missing feeling be connected to this disconnect from our creator that he's talking about?
It is a powerful question to consider. And then finally, Warren explains the third dimension.
Okay.
We are saved by something, God's grace.
Oh.
Now, this is where things can get a little theologically complex,
Sure.
but it's essential to understanding the whole picture.
All right, so break it down for us.
Yeah.
What exactly does grace mean in this context?
Essentially, grace is God's undeserved favor.
Okay.
It's not something we earn or achieve through our own efforts, but it's a free gift offered to us despite our flaws and our shortcomings. It flies in the face of that earn your way mentality that so many of us have internalized.
Yeah, so if I'm understanding this correctly, it's not about trying to be good enough to earn God's love.
Right.
It's about accepting that we're already loved and forgiven no matter what.
Exactly.
Wow, that's huge.
It's a radical concept that challenges those deeply ingrained notions we have of worthiness and merit.
Yeah.
But it's also incredibly liberating.
It is.
When you think about it, if salvation truly is a gift based on grace, it means everyone has equal access to it.
Yeah.
Regardless of their background, their mistakes, their current circumstances, it levels the playing field in a really profound way.
That's a lot to unpack.
It is.
But I can already see how this idea of grace connects back to the bigger picture of Christmas.
Yes.
It's like we're being offered this incredible gift,
Right.
but we have to choose to receive it,
Yes.
open our hands and our hearts to accept it.
Exactly. And that's where faith comes in. Warren emphasizes that salvation isn't about intellectual assent or flawlessly following some set of rules.
Yeah.
It's about trusting in something bigger than ourselves, even when we don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
It's like taking a leap of faith into the unknown,
Yeah.
trusting that we'll be caught by a love that is stronger than anything we can imagine.
So we've talked about celebration and salvation, but there's one more piece of the puzzle, right?
Yes.
Reconciliation.
Yes.
How does that fit into this whole Christmas story?
That's where we move from the personal to the universal,
Okay.
from our individual relationship with God to this broader idea of peace on earth.
Okay.
And as Warren points out, that's a pretty tall order in a world riddled with conflict.
Yes, it is.
But he argues that the Christmas story directly addresses this longing for peace. And not just some vague sentimental notion of peace,
Yeah.
but a deep, abiding peace that really permeates every aspect of our lives.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this peace thing.
Well, Warren breaks it down into 3 distinct but interconnected levels.
Okay.
Peace with God, peace within ourselves, and peace with others.
Okay.
It's like a 3-pronged approach to wholeness, recognizing that true peace can't exist in isolation.
Yeah. It's like you can't have a peaceful society if everyone's at war with themselves internally.
Exactly. And so Warren starts by tackling the root of the problem,
Okay.
our broken relationship with God.
Okay.
He describes it as a state of rebellion where we're constantly trying to do things our own way instead of surrendering to God's purpose.
Yeah.
And he doesn't mince words. He points out how this rebellion manifests in our everyday lives.
Right.
The irritability, the anxiety, the constant need to be in control, the feeling that we're always striving but never quite arriving.
Yeah, I feel seen.
Right.
But if that's the problem, what's the solution?
Well, it's not about negotiating or bargaining with God.
Okay.
Warren says it's about surrender. It's about acknowledging that he knows what's best for us, even when we can't see the whole picture.
Right.
It's about letting go of our need to be in control and trusting in his love and wisdom.
That sounds a lot like what we were talking about earlier with grace.
Yes.
It's like those two concepts are intertwined.
They are.
Surrendering to God's grace and experiencing peace with him.
Yes.
But what about that second level of peace?
Okay.
Peace within ourselves.
Right.
I know plenty of people who seem to have their act together externally,
Yeah.
but they're a complete mess internally.
That's where Warren brings in the serenity prayer.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the one, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yes.
It's such a simple yet profound prayer
It really is.
that speaks to the heart of finding inner peace amidst the chaos of life.
I love that prayer. It's so relatable.
It is.
But how do we actually apply it in our daily lives?
Yeah, it's definitely a practice.
Yeah.
Not a quick fix, Warren says. But he encourages us to cultivate habits that foster inner peace.
Okay, like what?
Things like prayer worship, spending time in nature, practicing gratitude.
Yeah.
It's about intentionally creating space for stillness and reflection
Yeah.
amidst all the noise and demands of life.
Those are all great ideas.
They are.
But I have to admit, it all sounds a bit, well, idealistic.
Okay.
How does this inner peace stuff translate into the real world,
Right.
where conflict is inevitable
Right.
and relationships are messy?
That's where that third level of peace comes in.
Okay.
Peace with others.
Oh.
And this isn't about being passive or avoiding conflict altogether.
Okay.
Warren clarifies that it's about actively working towards reconciliation, even when it's difficult, even when it feels impossible.
Yeah.
It's about transforming conflict rather than simply trying to eliminate it.
So how do we actually do that? I mean, I'm all for peace, but let's be real.
Sure.
Some people are just really hard to get along with.
I hear you, but Warren offers some surprisingly practical advice on how to navigate even the most challenging relationships.
Okay.
He starts by encouraging us to take the initiative to plan a peace conference with the person we're in conflict with.
Okay.
It's about taking ownership of our role in the situation, instead of waiting for the other person to make the first move.
I like that.
Yeah,
It takes courage.
it does.
But it also sets a different tone right from the start.
Absolutely.
But what happens once we're sitting down face to face with this person?
Right.
How do we actually have a productive conversation when emotions are running high?
Well, Warren emphasizes the importance of listening empathetically speaking, the truth in love, focusing on the problem rather than the person.
Okay,
All those
yeah.
communication skills we've talked about before,
Right.
but applied specifically to conflict resolution.
Yeah.
And one of his most important pieces of advice is to distinguish between forgiveness and trust.
Okay, break that down for me.
Okay, so forgiveness, Warren says, should be immediate and unconditional, just like God forgives us.
Okay.
It's about releasing the other person from the debt they owe us, freeing ourselves from that resentment and bitterness that keep us captive.
Right.
But trust, he clarifies, is a different story.
Yeah.
Trust takes time to rebuild.
Yeah.
It's earned through consistent actions and changed behavior over time.
That's such an important distinction.
It is.
Because I think we often feel pressured to rush into trusting someone again before we're ready.
Right.
And then we end up getting hurt all over again.
Exactly. So Warren encourages us to practice forgiveness as a way of freeing ourselves, but to be patient with the process of rebuilding trust.
Okay.
It's almost like forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves,
Right.
while trust is something that needs to be earned over time.
That's a great way to put it. But let's be honest, forgiveness can be incredibly hard,
It can.
especially when we've been deeply hurt.
Absolutely.
How do we even begin to tap into that kind of grace, especially when it feels like the other person doesn't deserve it?
That's where Warren circles back to the ultimate source of forgiveness, God.
Okay.
He reminds us that we can only truly forgive others to the extent that we've experienced God's forgiveness ourselves.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, hurt people hurt people.
Right.
If we're carrying around a lot of unforgiveness, it's going to seep out in our interactions with others.
Yeah. So the more we tap into God's grace and healing,
Yeah.
the more equipped we are to be agents of peace and reconciliation in the world.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that, in essence, is the message of Christmas.
This has been such a rich conversation already.
It has.
We've covered so much ground: celebration, salvation, reconciliation.
Yeah.
And it's clear that Christmas is about so much more than just the outward festivities.
It really is. It's about embracing the deeper meaning of Jesus's birth and allowing his message of love, hope, and peace to transform our lives from the inside out.
And that transformation, as we've been exploring, starts with our individual relationship with God.
Yeah.
And ripples outward into our relationships with ourselves and others.
It's a beautiful and powerful vision.
It is.
But it all starts with recognizing the incredible gift we've been given and choosing to unwrap it.
That's a perfect segue into the next part of our deep dive, where we'll delve into some of the practical ways Warren suggests we can actually unwrap this gift of Jesus.
Yes.
And live out its message in our everyday lives.
I'm excited for that.
Me too.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the purpose of Christmas. So far, we've explored those profound theological layers beneath the familiar holiday traditions.
Yeah.
But now I'm curious, how do we actually live out these kind of lofty concepts of celebration, salvation, and reconciliation?
Right. It's the million-dollar question.
It is.
It's easy to get swept up in the beauty and inspiration of these ideas.
Mm.
But how do we translate them into tangible action in our messy, complicated lives?
Right.
Thankfully, Warren doesn't leave us hanging.
Okay.
He actually offers some pretty concrete suggestions.
Right.
And some of them are surprisingly down to earth.
Like what?
Like his advice to throw a birthday party for Jesus.
Okay. I have to admit, when I first read that, I chuckled a little bit.
Yeah.
It sounded almost too simple,
Right.
too childlike.
Yeah.
But the way Warren describes it, it's not about childishness.
Right.
It's about childlike wonder and sincerity.
Mm-hmm.
And he shares how his own family has been doing this for decades.
Wow.
And it's become this cherished tradition, a way to intentionally center their celebration around the heart of Christmas. They even sing happy birthday to Jesus.
Okay, that's adorable. And it makes sense when you think about it. We throw parties for everyone else we love.
Right.
Why not the one whose birth we're supposedly celebrating?
Exactly.
But I imagine there's more to it than just cake and candles.
Of course, Warren explains that during their party, each family member answers 2 key questions.
Okay.
What are you thankful for from the past year?
Okay.
And what gift will you give Jesus this year?
Oh, wow. Those are powerful questions to reflect on, especially in the context of Christmas.
They are.
It's so easy to get caught up in just the frenzy of gift-giving and holiday to-dos
Right.
that we forget to pause and take stock of what truly matters.
Yes.
And those questions almost force you to do that,
They do.
to reassess your priorities and consider what kind of gift you're offering back to the one who gave you everything.
Exactly. And the beauty of it is that anyone can adapt this idea.
Yeah.
Regardless of their family structure or religious background.
Right.
Imagine setting aside that time for genuine reflection and connection amidst all the holiday chaos.
Yeah.
Whether it's with your family or a group of friends or even just by yourself.
Right.
It's a simple yet profound act that can really shift the whole focus of Christmas.
I'm already picturing myself trying to convince my family to do this.
It could be an uphill battle.
I might be an uphill battle.
It might.
But speaking of challenges, Warren doesn't shy away from the fact that Christmas isn't always merry and bright for everyone.
Right.
He acknowledges that many people experience loneliness, sadness, or even depression during the holidays.
That's right. And it's like all those Hallmark movie expectations collide with the messy realities of life.
Yeah.
And the contrast can be really jarring for people.
And in those moments of darkness and despair, it can be hard to grasp that whole God is with you message.
It can.
No matter how well-intentioned it is,
Right.
it can feel like just empty platitudes when you're in the depths of pain.
Absolutely. But Warren emphasizes that God's presence isn't dependent on our feelings.
Okay.
He's there even when we don't sense it, even when we push him away, even when we doubt his existence.
Right.
His love is a constant, unwavering reality, whether we acknowledge it or not.
That's comforting. But how do we tap into that reality when we're feeling lost and overwhelmed?
Yeah.
When our emotions are screaming that we're all alone?
Yeah.
How do we bridge that gap between intellectual assent and experiential knowing?
Well, Warren reminds us that one of Jesus's names is Emmanuel, which literally means God with us.
Right.
And it's not just a theological concept. It's a lived reality. It means we're never truly alone, even in our darkest moments.
It's like a lifeline in the midst of a storm.
It is.
But we have to choose to grab hold of it.
We do.
And then there's that whole idea of God being for us, not against us,
Yes.
which can be a total game changer when you're struggling with self-doubt and condemnation.
Absolutely. Warren points out how many people have this distorted view of God as a cosmic judge,
Yeah?
just waiting for us to mess up,
Right.
ready to punish us for every mistake.
Yeah, it's like we're constantly walking on eggshells,
Yeah.
trying to earn his approval, but never quite feeling good enough.
It's exhausting, and frankly, it's pretty demoralizing.
It is.
But Warren assures us that's not how God operates.
Okay.
He wants us to run to him, not away from him.
Okay.
He delights in our presence, not our performance. He loves us unconditionally.
Okay.
Not because of what we do, but because of who we are, his beloved children.
Okay. That's a huge relief. It almost feels too good to be true.
I know.
But if we don't have to earn God's love, if it's freely given, doesn't that make our actions meaningless?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one that Warren addresses head on.
Yeah.
He explains that it's not about our actions becoming meaningless.
Okay.
It's about their motivation shifting.
Oh, well.
When we understand the depth of God's grace, when we truly grasp that we're loved and forgiven despite our flaws, it doesn't lead to apathy or complacency.
Okay.
It leads to gratitude and a desire to live a life that reflects that love.
So it's like we're finally free from the treadmill of performance.
Yes.
And we can start running the race out of love and joy rather than fear and obligation.
Exactly. And that's where true transformation happens. It's not about gritting our teeth and white-knuckling our way through life, trying to earn God's favor.
Right.
It's about surrendering to his grace, allowing his love to work in and through us, and letting that love overflow into our actions and interactions with others.
So it's not about earning God's love, but about responding to it.
Precisely. And that response, Warren emphasizes, starts with faith. It's about trusting in Jesus and what he did for us on the cross,
Okay.
even if we don't fully understand it all intellectually.
So it's more than just mental assent.
Yes.
It's a heart surrender.
Exactly. It's a decision to say yes to Jesus' invitation, to become part of his family, to experience his love and forgiveness in a tangible way.
And the book doesn't shy away from the fact that this decision can be scary.
Right.
We're essentially giving up control,
Yes.
letting go of our old ways of doing things,
Yeah,
trusting someone else with the steering wheel of our lives.
that's true. And it requires a level of vulnerability and trust that can feel incredibly daunting,
Yeah.
especially if we've been hurt or let down in the past.
Right.
But Warren reminds us that true freedom comes from surrender, not from clinging to our own limited perspective.
Yes.
It's like we're trading in a broken compass for a GPS system that actually works.
I love that analogy.
That's a good one.
It paints such a vivid picture.
It does.
But what does this surrender look like in practical terms? How do we actually go about making this decision to follow Jesus?
Well, Warren includes a simple prayer in the book that anyone can pray.
Okay.
Inviting Jesus into their heart and asking him to be Lord of their life.
Mm.
And it's not a magic formula or a one-time fix,
Right.
but it's a starting point, a way to express our willingness to embark on this journey of faith.
Powerful stuff.
It is.
It really gets to the core of what Christmas is all about, this incredible exchange of love and surrender.
And the book emphasizes that this isn't about joining a particular religion or following a set of rules.
Right.
It's about a personal relationship with Jesus,
Okay.
a relationship that transforms us from the inside out.
So it's less about outward actions and more about an inward transformation.
Exactly. It's about allowing Jesus' love to change us at the deepest level, to reshape our desires, our priorities, our entire perspective on life.
Wow.
It's about becoming more like him, more loving, more compassionate, more forgiving, more joyful.
That sounds amazing, but let's be real. Change is hard.
It is.
How do we actually live out this transformed life once we've made that decision to follow Jesus?
Right.
It's easy to get swept up in the excitement of a new beginning.
Yes.
But how do we sustain that momentum when the initial enthusiasm fades and real life sets in with all of its challenges and distractions?
Well, Warren offers some practical advice for navigating the inevitable ups and downs of the Christian life.
Okay.
He starts by emphasizing the importance of finding a community of believers who can support us on our journey.
Okay.
He encourages readers to find a Bible-teaching church where they can learn more about God's Word and connect with others who share their faith.
It's like having a team of cheerleaders and mentors to help us stay on track,
Yes.
to encourage us when we stumble, and to celebrate our victories along the way.
Exactly. We weren't meant to do this alone.
Yeah.
And then Warren talks about the importance of sharing our faith with others,
Okay.
of being a light in the world and spreading the message of hope and peace that we've experienced.
So it's not just about our own personal transformation, but about extending that ripple effect outward,
Exactly.
letting our light shine so that others might find their way to the source of that light.
Absolutely. It's about becoming ambassadors of reconciliation, reflecting God's love and grace to a world that desperately needs it.
And Warren even suggests giving copies of his book as Christmas gifts,
Yes.
which I have to admit is a pretty clever idea.
It is.
It really speaks to the heart of this whole purpose of Christmas thing.
Yeah.
It's not about keeping this good news to ourselves, hoarding it like some precious commodity.
Right.
It's about sharing it with the world,
Yeah.
letting it overflow from our hearts and touch the lives of those around us.
And Warren goes a step further, challenging us to become peacemakers in our own spheres of influence.
Okay.
He talks about his PEACE plan,
Okay.
which is this framework for promoting reconciliation equipping servant leaders, assisting the poor, caring for the sick, and educating the next generation.
Wow.
It's a call to action, an invitation to move beyond individual piety and engage with the world's needs in a tangible, practical way.
That's a comprehensive approach to making a difference.
It is.
It shows how this Christmas message can go far beyond just our individual lives.
Right.
It has the power to transform communities and even the world.
It's a powerful vision, and one that requires our active participation.
Yeah.
It's not about passively waiting for someone else to fix the world's problems.
Right.
It's about rolling up our sleeves and getting involved, becoming agents of change, letting our faith inform our actions.
This has been such an inspiring conversation.
It has.
I feel like we've been given a glimpse of the true heart of Christmas, a heart that beats with love, grace, and that radical possibility of transformation.
Yes.
Not just for ourselves, but for the world around us.
And that brings us to a crucial question.
Okay.
How will you choose to unwrap this gift of Jesus this year? Will you simply admire the wrapping paper, content to observe the outward festivities from a distance? Or will you tear it open with eager anticipation, embracing the life-changing treasure inside and letting it transform you from the inside out?
It's a choice we all have to make.
We do.
And as we move into the final part of our deep dive, I encourage you to ponder that question deeply.
Yes.
What does it look like for you to truly unwrap this gift?
Right.
To receive it with open hands and a willing heart.
Yeah.
And to let its transforming power flow into every area of your life. Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, my mind is kind of swirling with all these incredible ideas we've unpacked from Rick Warren's book, The Purpose of Christmas.
Yeah, me too.
It's like we've peeled back the layers of this holiday and discovered this like treasure trove of meaning and purpose.
It really is.
But now the question is, how do we actually unwrap this gift of Jesus that Warren talks about?
Right.
How do we move beyond just the theoretical and embrace it in like a real tangible way that impacts our everyday lives?
That's the heart of it, isn't it? You know, Warren uses this beautiful analogy of receiving the most valuable personalized gift imaginable, but leaving it unopened in the corner.
Yeah.
And it's a really powerful image that captures, I think, the tragedy of how a lot of people approach the message of Christmas.
Right.
They sense there's something precious there, something that could change their lives, but they hesitate to fully embrace it.
It's like they're standing on the doorstep of transformation, but can't quite bring themselves to cross the threshold.
Yeah.
What do you think holds people back?
Well, Warren suggests it often boils down to a reluctance to surrender control. You know, we're so used to being in the driver's seat, calling the shots, relying on our own understanding.
Yeah.
But accepting the gift of Jesus requires a different posture, you know, one of humility, trust, and a willingness to let go of our preconceived notions.
Right.
It's about acknowledging that we don't have all the answers, that we're not as self-sufficient as we like to think we are, and that ultimately we need something greater than ourselves to fill that void in our hearts.
And that resonates with what we were talking about earlier with the concept of grace.
Yes.
It's that surrender to something bigger than ourselves. Recognizing that we can't earn our way into a right relationship with God.
Yes.
We have to receive it as a free gift.
It is free.
But how do we do that?
Right.
How do we move from intellectual understanding to heartfelt surrender?
That's where faith comes in.
Okay.
It's about taking that step of trust, that leap into the unknown, even when we don't have all the pieces perfectly aligned in our minds.
Right.
Warren reminds us that faith isn't about flawlessly understanding every theological nuance.
Right.
It's about saying yes to Jesus and what he did for us on the cross. Trusting that his love and sacrifice are enough to bridge that gap between us and God.
So it's less about having all the answers and more about trusting the one who does.
Exactly.
It's about heart surrender.
Yes.
But I have to admit that surrender can feel pretty scary. It's like we're handing over the reins of our lives.
Yeah.
Letting go of our need to be in control, and that can trigger all sorts of fears and insecurities.
You're right. Surrender is never easy.
Yeah.
It requires vulnerability, humility, and a willingness to embrace the unknown.
Yeah.
But Warren reminds us that true freedom doesn't come from clinging to our own limited understanding and control.
Right.
It comes from surrendering to a love that's bigger than our fears, a wisdom that surpasses our own.
It's like we're trading in that old broken compass for a state-of-the-art GPS system that knows the way, even when we're completely lost.
Yes.
But how do we practically make that trade?
Yeah.
What does this surrender look like in real life?
Well, Warren provides a simple yet powerful starting point, a prayer.
Okay.
He includes a prayer in the book that invites Jesus into your heart and acknowledges him as the Lord of your life.
Okay.
And it's not a magic formula or a guarantee of a problem-free existence,
Right.
but it is an act of surrender, a
Yeah.
declaration of willingness to embark on this journey of faith.
It's a beautiful expression of trust
Yeah,
and openness to what God might do in and through us.
it is.
But I think there's often this misconception that once you pray that prayer, you've somehow arrived at the destination.
All right.
It's like you've checked the box, and now you're officially a Christian, and everything should be smooth sailing from here on out.
That's a common misconception, and unfortunately, it leads to a lot of disappointment and disillusionment.
Right.
Warren is very clear that this prayer is just the beginning,
Okay.
the first step on a lifelong journey of faith.
Okay.
It's about embarking on a relationship with Jesus, a relationship that requires ongoing, nurturing, intentional growth, and a willingness to be transformed by his love and grace.
So it's less about a one-time transaction and more about an ongoing process of transformation.
Exactly.
Which reminds me of what we were talking about earlier with the different levels of peace.
Yeah.
It's a continual unfolding, a deepening, a journey rather than a destination.
It's a journey.
But that journey can feel overwhelming,
It can.
especially when you're first starting out. Where do you even begin?
Well, Warren emphasizes that we weren't meant to walk this path alone. He encourages readers to find a community of believers, a church where they can learn more about God's word and connect with others who share their faith.
Like having a team of mentors and cheerleaders.
Yes.
Who are there to support you, challenge you, encourage you, and celebrate your victories along the way.
Exactly. We need each other.
Mm.
We need that sense of belonging, that shared journey of faith.
Yes.
And then as our faith deepens and our hearts are transformed by God's love, Warren challenges us to share that love with others, to become ambassadors of reconciliation, reflecting God's grace to a world that desperately needs it.
So it's not just about our own personal transformation,
Right.
but about extending that ripple effect outward,
Yes.
letting our light shine so that others might find their way to the source of that light.
Precisely. It's about becoming agents of change, letting our faith inform our actions, and making a tangible difference in the world around us.
And Warren even suggests something as simple as giving copies of his book as Christmas gifts.
Yes.
I love that.
It's such a practical and meaningful idea.
It is.
And it speaks to the heart of this whole purpose of Christmas thing.
It does.
It's not about keeping this good news to ourselves, hoarding it like some precious commodity.
All right.
It's about sharing it generously, letting it overflow from our hearts and touch the lives of those around us.
And Warren goes even further. He challenges us to move beyond individual acts of kindness and become peacemakers in our spheres of influence.
Yes, he talks about his PEACE plan.
Yes.
This framework for promoting reconciliation on a larger scale, equipping servant leaders, assisting the poor, caring for the sick, and educating the next generation.
Wow, that's a comprehensive approach to making a difference.
It is.
And it's inspiring to see how this Christmas message can extend far beyond our individual lives, impacting communities and even the world.
It's a beautiful vision, but it requires our active participation. You know, it's not about passively waiting for someone else to fix the world's problems.
Right.
It's about rolling up our sleeves, getting involved, becoming agents of change, letting our faith inform our actions and inspire us to make a real difference.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the purpose of Christmas,
Yeah.
I want to circle back to that question we posed earlier.
Yeah.
How will you choose to unwrap this gift of Jesus this year? Will you simply admire the wrapping paper content, to observe the outward festivities from a distance?
Right.
Or will you tear it open with eager anticipation, embracing the life-changing treasure inside and allowing it to transform you from the inside out?
The choice is yours, but I can't help but think back to that image of the unopened gift gathering dust in a corner.
Yeah.
What a tragedy it would be to miss out on the extraordinary love, joy, and purpose that await us when we open our hearts to the true meaning of Christmas.
It's a decision that could change everything, not just this Christmas season, but for all eternity. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you leave inspired to unwrap the gift of Jesus and experience the transformative power of his love in your own life. From all of us here at The Deep Dive, we wish you a very Merry Christmas, filled with meaning, joy, and peace.